Rohit, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
It's great to see you and to catch up. I want to hear about Object Edge and talk about kind of the market and what you're seeing with customers and what's going on. We got Dreamforce coming up, of course, but why don't we start off with how you and I met?
Do it, man.
Yeah, it's with through probably the greatest salesperson I've ever met in my life, a guy named Mark Beesman. And we'd have late nights talking about tech and talking about and doing telling jokes. That was
You're the king of jokes. So I have repurposed your jokes across many a meeting, both professional and personal. So thank you for that.
I love it. So why don't we start off? Why don't you tell me a little bit about Object Edge, how you're the CEO of Object Edge, what you guys do, what space you're in, and what pulled you into it and being an entrepreneur and driving the company's growth.
Yeah, no, thanks. Look, Object Edge on the surface is a professional services company. Primarily, we work across the Oracle, Salesforce, and now Microsoft ecosystems. So in the Salesforce and Oracle ecosystems, we're doing a lot of e-commerce work, a lot of order management work, CRM work. And then now with Microsoft, we're doing a lot of AI. So working with a lot of their AI tools in Azure. Obviously, OpenAI is available through Microsoft. So those three major channels is how we drive the majority of our revenue.
Those are the three biggest channels you can have. So,
but where I'd say that we're kind of trying to disrupt the industry is that as a professional services company, we feel that the technology professional services market has been broken pretty much since its inception because it's been set up as a mechanism in which the professional services companies themselves have absolutely no accountability to the end business results we're trying to achieve through technology and data implementation.
Yeah.
So if you implement a CRM, most companies, for example, want a CRM primarily for the reason of, hey, we want more accurate sales forecasting. So you'll go through an entire sales process and budgeting process. Sorry, you'll start with the
how the Salesforce market was broken. And you and I have talked about this before, so I'd love to hear your take on that. Talk a little bit about how the consulting and tech consulting market is kind of broken and how it's putting the best, people's incentives aren't aligned in the best way.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, yeah. So when I mean that the professional services market is broken, is ultimately we get paid regardless of whether the original business objectives are ever met. And I talk about this from the context of it made sense a long time ago when the technology that we're implementing and the business results that you're trying to achieve were miles apart. But nowadays, I believe professional service companies need to take some sort of accountability to ensure that the data and technology that's being implemented is actually achieving business results. So the two big ones that we do is for e-commerce, for example. When we implement e-commerce, we actually guarantee a specific level of customer satisfaction on the website. So we guarantee, we take surveys out of every transaction, and we guarantee that your customers are going to give you a 4.5 out of 5 or higher over a rolling 60-day window, or you don't pay us. Right. So we will take and join that risk with you that, hey, you're implementing an e-commerce solution. You're not quite sure what are the features that you should have. You're not quite sure what the UX should look like. You're not quite sure how customers are going to respond. And ultimately, when you go in and you start building out these websites, what ends up happening then is that there's a lot of things that need to happen post-delivery. You need to look at your analytics. You need to talk to your customers. You need to continuously iterate the website. And a lot of companies don't have the operational experience and expertise on staff to do that. So they think, okay, I've launched my website, now what?
Yeah.
But we just package it all together. We say, hey, look, at the end of the day, you're buying this website. Let's guarantee you that CSAT. Let's spread out the cost of this implementation over 3 years. And ultimately, we'll be your partner to guarantee your customers are happy. Now, you're responsible for making sure that you can deliver your product on time. You're responsible for making sure that your prices are right. You're responsible for making sure that you get customers to your website. But we guarantee you that when you get to the website, they're going to have a great time. CRM, same thing. We guarantee that you're going to be able to accurately forecast your sales to a certain level of percentage. So if a company has no sales accuracy today, we'll come in and say, hey, look, as long as you've got this information, we'll predict your sales accuracy to 85%. And then we'll help them go out there and get that data. So what's the biggest problem today in CRM? Sales reps don't enter the data correctly.
Right.
Well, we've developed a bunch of tools and processes to ensure that, hey, we will call your sales reps ourselves and get that information and enter it into the CRM, so the algorithms can properly start predicting that sales forecasting. So the whole reason that you implemented Salesforce CRM, was to get better sales forecasting, and we'll just guarantee that. And if you're not getting that sales forecasting guarantee, then ultimately you don't pay us. So we're taking that risk with them.
I love that. You're coming onto their side of the table and looking at a thing. And the other thing you're doing is, instead of doing an 8-week or a 12-week rollout of a website, you're creating a partnership that spans multiple years. And so that you can basically optimize and get to know each other and make sure that there's other opportunities they can tackle together as well.
And ultimately, I call that man our risk-free rate. So we know that 70% of all IT projects fail. So when you go out there and let's just say you've got $1 million budgeted for your e-commerce, because we primarily are working with companies in that 250 million on up revenue range.
Sure.
So let's just say you budgeted $1 million for your website and operations, CapEx for licenses, all that stuff, right? And you've got a 70% chance of failure, or you've only got a 30% chance of success over those next 3 years to actually achieve your outcomes, your product launch going correctly, you actually knowing how to read your analytics and reach out to your customers in the right way, et cetera. So what we say is, hey, look, rather than spending $1 million up front and all this money in year 2 and year 3, why don't you take that money and we'll spread it out over 3 years? Because typically in these technology implementations, the first year is very CapEx intensive, and years 2 and years 3 are less expensive, but it's mainly OpEx, right? As you're operating the website or you're operating the CRM. Well, we take that CapEx and OpEx budget, we merge it, and we spread it out over 3 years. Right. So you're ultimately spending less in year 1 than you would have if you just did this heavy lift. And why do we do that? Because again, we're taking some of the risk now. So it's the risk off rate. If I can guarantee you your CRM is going to give you 85% or better revenue forecasting accuracy, what are you willing to pay? Right. We'll take that and now divide it over 3 years, and we're guaranteeing that rate.
Yeah.
If you're to launch an e-commerce site, how much would you pay to guarantee that your customers are going to give you 4.5 out of 5 in a rolling 60-day window over the next 3 years? Yeah. Well, you're probably going to be willing to pay your premium because you're paying an insurance policy. And we're saying, hey, pay us that money. We'll distribute it out over 3 years. And the second, or I should say the month, that your customers drop below 4.5 out of 5, you stop paying us until we get it back on track.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. This is basically outcome-based pricing, and it's right. We as tech vendors, I've been doing consulting for a long. My firm's been doing AI consulting way before LLMs. We were doing recommendation engines and churn analysis, and now what we've had is the big flux. You're working closely with OpenAI and Microsoft with these LLMs, and those things did a lot of things that changed the game. Two most notable are, it really enhanced the customer support application because you had that clear communication. You could talk in any kind of way you would and communicate with it. And it also obviously streamlined content generation, so people can kind of create that. But we're still seeing people kind of searching for the right ROI for some of these AI spends. And now, I know you're a big Salesforce partner. We got Dreamforce coming up. You talked about CapEx and OpEx. The biggest complaint we get from Salesforce customers is the pricing. It gets out of control, gets very big, very, very quick. And with the advent of Einstein and now they're moving to agents, how has that changed kind of the ecosystem for consultants? What does that mean for the people that are trying to get the work on? Because I think it has significant impact on kind of the type of work that you should be doing, as well as, like you said, agreeing on the outcomes ahead of time.
Yeah, great question, man. Look, if you don't mind, I'll break that into 2 things, because you mentioned ROI, and then you also mentioned how does the consulting world need to change. And I think they're a little bit different, if you don't mind, because ultimately everything should be a contributor to your return on your investment, right? So if we're going to change what we're doing as a service provider, it ultimately should somehow be moving the needle in you either generating a higher return on your investment or getting a faster return on your investment. And depending on the customer and depending on the company, they'll value those things differently. So in terms of how has the ROI game changed? I mean, you're spot on. People are still searching for where can I leverage these modern, because first off, AI as of today is a new tool. In the future, it might be something very different with AGI, right? But as of right now, it's simply a tool, the same way any of these other things are tools.
Yeah.
And the way that what we're seeing out there in the industry is that companies are struggling to figure out how can this move the needle either in bringing in more revenue or increasing margin, i.e. decreasing costs, right? So how can I leverage these tools to meaningfully increase my revenue or meaningfully decrease my costs? And here's the important part, as a function and relative to how much I'm spending on AI to get there. So I don't think the real question is, hey, I'm spending 100,000 or I'm spending 100 million. The question is, how much money am I making in return, or how much cost am I saving in return?
Yeah.
Quite frankly, today, most companies are seeing huge efficiency gains. So they are in the concept of co-pilots, seeing their employees and their OpEx become much more effective and efficient. They aren't laying people off because of it. So therefore, it's not really impacting margins yet. So what we've been talking to clients about is what we call return on, basically, it's a function of what is your OpEx spend as a function of revenue, right? So employee per revenue, we would like to see that go up with what we're seeing in the efficiency gains. Yeah. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're a $100 million company today and you spend, for the simple sake of math, $100 million on your OpEx, right? Obviously, you're making no money there, but just to be simple, right? Yeah, yeah. So you have a ratio of 1-to-1 there. You make $100 million and you're spending $100 million on your people. Well, what we'd love to see with AI is your people become so efficient that in order to execute $200 million of revenue, you don't need $200 million worth of people. Ideally, you still need just that $100 million, i.e. you don't need to raise your OpEx in order to service the same amount of revenue. Now your ratio is 2-to-1. And so that's where we're really seeing the power of AI as of, Q3 2024. Yeah. Is we're seeing an improvement in revenue per employee.
Well, it's really interesting, right? You kind of said the quiet part out loud, which is what we're seeing too, is that for most of the AI use cases, you don't get the ROI until you cut headcount. Now, in the Valley, we don't like to say that because we want to be very everyone's going to do other things and they're going to grow up and they're going to get more important things. But particularly in the customer support use case, we're seeing quite a bit that you can do much more with less, given the power of some of these tools now. And it's interesting now because we have another change. It's like, this is why it's so important to kind of have a trusted relationship with your customer, because the playing field is shifting so quickly, right? Yep. We were doing traditional AI and doing things like churn analysis and recommendations forever. The LLMs came, but now people conflate a lot of times automation with AI, and in terms of kind of how to repeat, like you have 1,000 interns that can kind of repeat processes. But the big thing now, and you're going to see this at Dreamforce, they're going all in on agents. And I'd love to hear your take on that and what that means for customers. When I describe it to people that we're using, I say that, the AI workload is a great recipe, and you can use it, you can get the right things you want, but an agent, if it's done correctly and is a head chef and can use any recipe and actually make changes on the fly. And it's kind of the analogy between automation and AI, where automation, you can do a rules-based kind of automation that if you do this, but it can't handle any kind of changes in it. Whereas an agent can kind of take that on. And I'm very interested to see how this is going to play out as Mark and Salesforce kind of pushes it, to the nth limit, as they did with co-pilots.
Yeah, so I see two big things are coming in the horizon over the next 12 to 18 months. Agentic workflows, which is what you're referring to, and also access control on the data fabric. And so I think both need to work hand in hand. So I love your analogy. I'm going to steal it, so hope you don't mind, about the chef and then the cooks on the cooking line, right? So today you have co-pilots. Is these cooks on the cooking line, you're high level, you're directing them, you're telling each one what to do, and they're helping you, right? You might, instead of cutting 100 potatoes yourself, you might cut one, train somebody to do it. Now they're cutting the other 99. Versus you're the chef, you're directing, hey, I need this recipe cooked, and then it goes off and does it. So that's the agentic workflow piece. And then access control on the data fabric is also really important, which is I've got all this data in my organization spread across multiple systems. And each system typically has some level of access control, i.e. you log in and you're authorized to view a certain amount of data. If you've used Microsoft 365 or Google Docs, you see that all the time. You can share, and you can say, who do I want to share with? I want to, and those are the only people that have access to it. Now, this is the big problem for AI, because if you feed all your corporate data into the AI, as of today, there is no easy way to tell the AI who should be able to access what data other than prompt engineering or creating distinct AIs, each one having only being trained on the data or leveraging vector databases with the data that you want that AI to answer. So those are the two big problems that are coming to be solved over the next 12 to 18 months, which is agentic workflows and what's being called now access control on the data fabric. The interesting thing about Salesforce, because you mentioned that with Dreamforce coming up and Oracle with Oracle Open World coming up next week, is that, you know, Salesforce is a very unique problem in that Salesforce really only has access to what we call front office data. Salesforce is primarily a CRM and service company. And all the data they have native access to are your opportunity workflows and your customer service requests.
Yeah.
A lot of the ERP data is what Oracle owns, right? Which is your supply chain, your rating, your accounts receivables, accounts payable, all that stuff is sitting in Oracle. Oracle, by the way, doesn't have access to the front office data, right? Hardly anyone uses Oracle CRM or Oracle Service or whatever. So Salesforce has access to front end office. Oracle has access to back office. You can argue about who has access to the mid office. Yeah. That's where Salesforce's strategy with Data Cloud is really important, because Data Cloud will allow Salesforce to get access to all the other data that's in the organization that's not native to Salesforce. And then they hope to use their AI and their AI engines on top of that data. Now, where, to your point, I think Salesforce AI is great for three predominant personas today. Now, if they come up with something that I haven't seen before, that's different, but there's three types of companies that I think should really be thinking strongly about Salesforce AI. Number one, if the majority of the business users access business data through Salesforce, i.e. CRM, service, Slack, if any of your decision makers, your VP of sales, your VP of finance, your VP of marketing,
the big three: sales, marketing, and service clouds. Yeah.
Right. If you're accessing your corporate information through Salesforce, then it makes a lot of sense then to bring in other data through Salesforce and to be able to ask questions through Slack, for example. Hey, what products do I get the highest margins on? Well, you need supply chain data and cost data to be mixed with product data. And now you ask that question through Slack. Another very obvious user of AI would be if you're using AI, if you're using Marketing Cloud and Data Cloud, because I think there's a lot of really interesting AI tooling that's coming on top of the marketing and data work that Salesforce is doing that you can use it. And the third is if you use Salesforce to solve some very bespoke business problems that are unique to you. And if you're using Salesforce to solve very bespoke business problems, and I'll give an example of what I mean there, okay, is that, for example, if you want your entire organization, your service reps, your sales reps, and your customers to have access to all the order information that are relevant to them across the enterprise. So data that comes in via EDI, data that comes in through CRM, data that comes in through commerce, data comes in through CPQ. Usually those are all fed in. If you want access for all three of those personas to have access in any one of those Salesforce portals, like communities, for you to use AI. So anyways, those are three Salesforce personas that I think benefit directly from AI.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good insight. Well, the other thing is that you guys always also get very deep in the niches like configure, price, quote, CPQ, and you kind of help with people that have kind of vertical niches, which is, it's always when you have that kind of workflow and that domain knowledge around that particular craft, it makes a much better partnership. She wrote about is that, yes, Salesforce has a great idea with the data cloud, but I'm a big believer in open source and in multi-cloud. And the vendor lock-in is just so great when you have everything on that cloud. And, Mark always says that, hey, trust is our number one value, but we believe that we can trust him, but it's the wrong question, is what I said in a blog post, which is that, I'm a big believer in an open data lakehouse that kind of has your corporate data, and then you can run your AR workloads off of that. I know you guys are very much into that too. In fact, we talked to some of your people in your data team, and I think there's some stuff we can do together. But talk to me a little bit about that, about vendor lock-in and how to make sure we're looking out for the customers.
I would say that Mark probably read your blog post because recently Data Cloud announced that they want to avoid lock-in, and now you can stream your data. So you can host your data in any one of these other clouds, and you can stream the data through Data Cloud. So Salesforce can have access to it. So I think the industry agrees with you there, man, in that, you've got all these hyperscalers, well, not all these, you've got these 3 or 4 major hyperscalers, right? With Amazon, Microsoft. I would throw actually Oracle in the mix now with the OCI work, right? And Google. And you've got these 4 major hyperscalers that are saying, hey, I'm giving you raw hardware. I'm giving you all the platform on top of it, host your data here. And I'm giving you all these AI tools. And now Salesforce is saying, well, but I'm a SaaS provider. So I'm actually providing you a software as a service that's providing meaningful application layer kind of logic sitting on top of these platforms. So, hey, funnel that data through me. And they're all kind of vying for this magical thing that we're calling data. Right? They're all vying for, hey, host your data here, because they know that whoever hosts that data is going to have a leg up on making any type of artificial intelligence useful for them. Because these artificial intelligence models, these large language models, even the machine learning models, they're all going to be reliant on proprietary data to make meaningful change that's important for a given company. Otherwise, the same companies are going to have to access the same tools. And now, if everybody has it, it's not meaningful.
It's not different,
right?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And you're right. We have the big 3, but there's actually Oracle and IBM. There's other people that are kind of getting into the game, and it's going to be interesting to see how some of these big. Right now everything is in our vendor is kind of platform based. You have a platform, and you kind of. And, it's so easy now with these co-pilots and with the understanding of how to build code to actually build these point SaaS solutions. I just think it's an interesting time right now in the industry where people, it used to be, hey, you either go with the platform suite or you go best of breed and you try and figure it out. All it means is that there's more of a need for value add consultancies like Object Edge, in my opinion, because it gets this particularly if you're in that mid-market, what you mentioned, Rohit. I've always liked the way that you can pinpoint a business problem, then come up with a solution that it's a win-win, because that's what's going to be needed. When the world is changing so quickly, you got to have trusted partners that know the technology, and then come up with a solution that can make it work without you trying to rejigger every time a new technology comes along.
Well, this is what I actually think is so powerful about our joint venture model, man, and that ultimately data and technology is always going to be changing. So this is where I think system integrators, or what was traditionally a system integrator, should probably die, because businesses now should demand that they don't have system integrators, that they have business partners. And so ultimately, if you are a manufacturer of, let's say, semiconductor wafers, do you really want to build out an operational team that's going to help manage and run your e-commerce site or your informational site for your distributors and your partners? No. Yeah. So that's where partners like us need to come to the table and offer compelling value, i.e. it's what they call the no-brainer offers. Yeah. If someone comes to the table, right, and says, hey, this website drives $10 million worth of value for you, I'm going to guarantee that it gives you a great experience. I'm going to charge you $1 million a year, and you don't pay me if I'm not generating these KPIs. That's a no-brainer offer. Yeah. And then the reason I bring this up, man, is then it doesn't matter if I'm using AI, if I'm using, Salesforce AI, if I'm using Google AI, if Gemini, if I'm using Claude, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Your costs are fixed. Your results are guaranteed. And ultimately, unless you want that to be your expertise, which most companies shouldn't, then they need more partners like us out there in the world that are willing to take the risk and be a true partner. The challenge is everyone says they want to be a partner, but no one wants to take the risk. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to charge you my full margin, and I'm going to implement this software for you. Good luck if it actually achieves any kind of business value for you, because you've already paid me. Very few companies, in fact, I only know of one, us, are willing to step up and say, hey, you know what? Technology is confusing, data is confusing. There's a lot of stuff out there. Here's what you need to bring to the table. Here's what I'm going to bring to the table. Here's the value. Here's the KPI that I'm going to guarantee you. Then let's have an intelligent conversation if that's actually worth it for you.
You know, I love it, Rohit. You know, we had, remember back in the day before the hyperscalers, everybody thought they had to have their own build out. They had to have their own data center. Back in the days of when Cisco was born, everyone wanted to have a NOC, and quickly educated people that that's not the right business for you to be in. That level of abstraction is getting higher. Now it's, hey, you don't need to run your own e-commerce site. You don't need to run your own, CRM site. So you're absolutely right. That's getting, as this technology shifts, we have to have we as vendors have to have a better offering to the customer base, so it makes it easier for them to kind of withstand. I love it, Rohit. Hey, this has been great. It's wonderful to see. What are the next big steps for Object Edge? I know you tell us a little bit about the company, the size, the locations you play in, and who your target audience is, so we can help get the word out.
Sure, man. Well, look, we have about 200 people spread across 4 countries. So the United States, which is primarily our leadership team and our technology architects. Our major development happens both out of Brazil and Colombia, though majority out of Brazil, but we just recently in 2023 launched our Colombia office, which has been great. We also have a really wonderful team out of India to support the kind of round the clock model. So United States, Brazil, Colombia, India, 200 people across those 4 regions, primarily servicing B2B organizations, anywhere between 250 million all the way up to $10 billion of revenue. Our average customer makes about $1 billion a year. And like I said, what we're really working with them on is these joint venture models. We're saying, hey, if you want to get guaranteed KPI, business KPI from your CRM, if you want guaranteed business KPI from your e-commerce, if you want guaranteed business KPI from your AI, then you come to us and we wrap up all these platforms with the right CapEx, OpEx investment, everything. And we provide you a monthly fee and we guarantee you the business KPI. And it's very simple. If we don't hit the business KPI, you don't pay us. And ultimately what companies see is they spend 50% less in year 1, but I'm going to be really honest with you, they end up paying more over the course of the 3 years, as they should, because we're sharing the risk. So there's an insurance premium there. Yeah. But we're very upfront about it, right? So, hey, if this is going to cost you X, with us, it might cost you 1.3X, but you're guaranteed the results. And that 1.3X is spread out over 3 years. So you get 100%. A lot of time to make sure that we're delivering the right value.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I love it. It's a great business model. I think you're in some very hot spaces. So we look forward to seeing your growth.
Thanks, man. Are you going to be at